Hi, welcome to the Beacon Hill Report with Senator Joan Lovely. I'm your host, Walt Kosmowski. Senator, welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be back.
It's been at least a year and a half since we've sat here and talked.
It has been.
Yeah, BevCam went dark in mid-March of 2020.
Right.
And we just reopened for taping in our studio here just a few weeks ago. So
nice to be here.
It's nice to have you here,
Thank
Senator.
you.
Yeah. So I'd like to kind of concentrate today on the state budget and some of the things that are in there that are of benefit to our community here.
Sure.
And now, first of all, the current session, is the current session still in session, or is it recessed for the summer?
So we actually, by Constitution, we can't recess. We are in session every 72 hours. So for us, it's Mondays and Thursdays. But in the month of August, we don't do formal sessions. So our informal sessions still continue every Monday and Thursday, year round. But we recess from formal sessions. So for the next 4 weeks, we won't have a formal session, and we will go back to formal sessions after Labor Day. Now, that didn't happen last year. In 2020, because of the pandemic, back in March, the legislature went remote. So the State House closed, and the State House remains closed to the public right now. Members are allowed in. Staff is discouraged, although that will change after Labor Day. I'm on a reopening working group for the Senate to get us back in there. It's an interesting concept because it's a public building, so the public, once we invite the public back in, how do you determine who's been vaccinated, who hasn't been vaccinated? So we're still working on those issues to make sure that we can get staff and members safely back in. We may be a hybrid type of situation. I've been in pretty much throughout the pandemic, going in for sessions and making sure that for a while the plants were getting watered. I brought those home because I do care about the plants, but to make sure that our day-to-day activities. But I will tell you, I know you asked about budget, but we have been busy. We have been working just about 7 days a week responding to the pandemic. And last August, we continued to stay in formal sessions right through to January 5th, where we ended our session, the last session, at 5 in the morning, and we were sworn in at 11 o'clock in the morning, same morning, to start this session.
No rest at all, right?
No. So we have been very busy responding to the pandemic. As you can imagine, there's been a tremendous amount of need.
Now, did you meet, like very many organizations did, remotely through Zoom and other types of?
Yep. So we have our own Zoom account for my office. Each office does. And then when we meet formally, we meet in Teams, Microsoft Teams. It's a much securer platform. Zoom can be, there can be people who can get into your
we've
into
heard
Zoom.
Stories about
that. And we saw one. I was in a hearing recently, and somebody posted something that was
crashed.
Crashed exactly. So Microsoft Teams is a secure platform. It can't be penetrated. So for our formal sessions, that's what we use as well. But I will tell you, it's become, we were efficient before, but now I could have 10, 12 Zoom meetings in a row in one day. Whereas, in the State House, I could maybe do 6 because people have to travel to Boston, find parking, get into the office, etc.
Sure.
So there was more lag time in between, whereas this we can go right from one to another to another. It's been great. We are very accessible to the public. I still do remote office hours, but now we'll go back and we'll continue remote office hours for those people who, can do it right from home. Or we'll be at the different senior centers shortly as well.
Right, well, I think that's true of a lot of professions and a lot of work areas where the pandemic, of course, the downside we know, but the upside was that they've learned to work more efficiently and work within the confines of these hybrid meetings, and you get much more efficient. And you don't have to, as you say, you don't have to travel, and all that travel time is eliminated. So,
right. So you asked about the budget. I didn't want to just not answer that question. We did just pass our $46 billion budget at the very beginning of July. Unique, though, last year, because of the pandemic, we didn't pass a full budget until December. So we did a 1/12 budget for July, August, September, October, November, and then last November, when we knew what our revenue projections were, because we didn't know.
Right.
And we were not getting, any type of relief out of the federal government yet. So Massachusetts took a very unique step and did 1/12 budgets, and we kept those the same as the year before. So we didn't, our communities, the municipalities, and different things that we're funding didn't see any decrease, and that allowed us to get to November when we contemplated that budget for the remainder of the fiscal year through this past June, and we were able to make sure that we didn't have to make any cuts to that budget. Very unique in a pandemic world where we're all operating not knowing what was coming next.
Right.
And now we're ahead of projections for tax collections, and we're in a pretty good financial condition. All things considered. Now we did have to take money out of our rainy day account, and we had one of the most robust rainy day accounts in the country.
Right. Yeah, we did.
So that helped us. That gapped us. We were able to take a couple of billion, 2.5 billion out to gap us as well. So we're in pretty good fiscal shape. Now, remains to be seen. Now we're seeing some inflation. So where is that going? And we want to make sure that we're not going to enter into a recession, a couple of years down the line. So we're watching projections very closely. And again, collections and putting that money away for the next rainy day.
The next rainy day, yeah.
It may come.
Yeah. So I mean, by law, do you have to have a budget done by June 30th? But then, so what you did is you just did 1/12, meaning month by month by month. You
Correct.
Extended it, and you could do that legally then,
We
right?
could.
Okay.
We could, right. So we're never out of budget. We, if we're not able to pass the full budget, we will do a 1/12 budget and still be within compliance.
Right.
And it was
So-
a smart thing to do.
So this budget right now is the 21-22 budget, correct?
Correct.
20
Right.
or the 20,
It's
20
the, it's
22.
The, it's the FY22 budget, exactly,
FY22.
going into
Right.
FY22.
It starts July 1st and goes to June 30th
Exactly.
of the next year, yeah. And now it's 48.7 is the number, I think, 48.7 billion,
Yep.
billion dollar budget. Let's, before we talk about that, can you talk about any significant legislation that has passed that you've worked on in the last 18 months or so? I know there's a Financing Improvements Act for roads and bridges. I think you were the prime proposal proponent of that?
Well, so that would be Senator Boncory, who's the chair of transportation, who carried that Chapter 90 bill. So that ensures that we are able to fund the renovation, construction, et cetera, of our roadways. If you think about it, most of those roadways are local. They're not our highways. They really are Cabot Street, Rantoul Street.
Right.
And it's up to the municipalities to determine what needs to be done. And as I was coming over the Beverly-Salem Bridge, I saw, there's construction right there coming into Beverly, some roadway improvements. So one thing about less people being on the road, they have been able to get more of these roadway projects done. They're inconvenient, but they're necessary. So we did 300 million. So 200 million goes into Chapter 90, and then 100 million goes into different grant opportunities for communities to be able to apply to. Beverly is right on top of that.
Yeah.
They go after every dollar that's available. I think Mayor Cahill does a great job in his planning department to be able to get those
There's
funds.
been a lot of work on the roads and infrastructure here in Beverly in the last several years.
We live in the Northeast. It snows here.
Yeah.
We're not
Yeah.
from Florida
Well,
where
yeah,
those
that's
roadways
right.
last longer.
And you get
It's
the
different.
temperature swings and things
Yep.
things expand and then they contract and
Exactly.
sidewalks crack and roads crack
They do.
and things like that.
They do.
Yeah.
Some other bills that we worked on, even though we were in pandemic mode all last session, so that interrupted a lot of our legislative work. The legislature files anywhere between 6,000 and 7,000 bills a year.
I'm amazed at that number.
Yeah, every single bill gets a hearing too. A lot of those are refiles. A bill ordinarily doesn't make it through in its first session. Some do, but most don't. They need some homework, some vetting. Every state agency, whatever one it might affect, vets it, advocacy groups, citizens, everybody gets to put their eyes on it to make sure it's intended to do what we want it to do. And but we still were able to get some good work done, and one of those was the Next Generation Roadmap for climate policy.
Okay.
So that's net zero by 2050, very aggressive, but we think doable.
And that's in line with the federal proposal as well, the federal aims, yeah.
Right, exactly. So, we need an additional 2,400 megawatts of offshore wind. Now, Looking at Salem, at the power plant, there's a piece of property adjacent to that that could be a great place for offshore wind assembly. They call it a marshalling yard, where they come and literally assemble that and float those out to sea, and that could be for the Gulf of Maine. They're planning to put some offshore wind in the Gulf of Maine. Very deep water, great wind. We're very unique here in Massachusetts. We don't have any natural resources where we can make energy. We don't take oil out of the ground or gas out of the ground, and when we used coal, we still use gas. We're not using oil, but that gas has to come from Pennsylvania or in the Midwestern states, and that's an expense to get it here. We don't have a lot of pipelines that come up here.
Yeah.
Pipelines aren't popular either, right? So
yeah, we know that.
So we pay a lot more money here in the Northeast for our energy than other parts of the country.
If we can generate it locally,
let's get some wind
through renewable.
Wind and solar, absolutely. So it was a really good bill, and it was Senator Mike Barrett that really carried that bill. He did a great job. Another bill that we did was for emergency paid and sick leave in our UI solvency fund. So as you can imagine, I think we had like $2.5 billion in our UI fund, and that grew to a deficit of over $7 billion. Now we can deficit spend that because the federal government will see that, but we got to pay it back. And so we did that. We actually bonded to be able to pay those funds back. But who gets hurt with that? It's the employer, and to some extent the employee. But the employer, they get assessed how many people went out on unemployment, and that goes against them. It works against them. So we wanted to be able to fill that hole as well and gap that over a number of years. So it's not really fair. Employers didn't bring on a pandemic upon themselves, and that people went out of work. The number one call we're still getting in the office, though, is unemployment claims. And why do we get called? Because people can't navigate the unemployment system. When it first started rolling out, these thousands and hundreds of thousands of claims, we were the victims of fraud, our state. We've got some of the most generous unemployment benefits in the country. And we had foreign operators who were pretending to be unemployed come in and millions of dollars that they drew right out of the system. Yeah. So we had to shut it down. The administration, the governor, had to shut that down and really make it so much tighter. And so what has resulted, it's harder for people to get their benefits. So they call our office. We're helpful. We can be helpful to kind of move that along. Yeah. So, but it still is the number one call.
Let me ask you this: going along with the effect that the COVID and people losing jobs. Now, the moratorium on evictions, I think, has just ended, right?
Yeah, the federal moratorium.
Yeah, the federal moratorium. How is that affecting Massachusetts? Or do we have a different setup here?
We had one that expired earlier this year. So the federal moratorium was overseeing it. So there's no moratorium now for evictions. People can anticipate who are behind in their rent. Can anticipate, perhaps the landlord starting the eviction process. Yeah. What the administration did do with support of the legislature was to beef up our housing court system so that more advocates, so that people, when they're presented into the system, okay, what's the issue? Why couldn't you pay your rent? Oh, you were out of work. Can we set up a payment plan with your landlord so that they can negotiate some terms to keep people housed? We don't want to see people going out and being evicted and then become homeless. So we're hoping, and it looks like that is helping so far, but there could be an onslaught of eviction notices coming for people.
Are you seeing any? Are you getting any complaints or any people calling your office on that issue? Not yet. Yeah.
Not yet. Yeah. What we're seeing is people who are still housing insecure, even pre-pandemic, who are still trying to, perhaps get a voucher. We heard from this one mom, a mom and her mom and two little ones, who literally got in their car from Florida. Saw it on Facebook. I saw on Facebook that Massachusetts will house you right away. They jumped in their car, they drove to Massachusetts, and they were shocked they couldn't get housed right away. You have to get into the system.
What kind of message were they looking at?
They were something on Facebook, someone who said, oh, go to Massachusetts, they'll take care of you. Yeah. We will, but you can't just show up and say, okay, here we are, where's our apartment? So, so that was, we're working with them to get them secure, but the message out there is,
Yeah.
Don't show up in Massachusetts. It's, you're not going to automatically get housing.
Right. Any other significant legislation, Senator?
You know what? So we've been working on the Holyoke Soldiers Home, as you can imagine,
Right,
with
yeah.
the amount of deaths out there. And what we'd like to do is, and I'm working with a group, this Dignity Alliance, is to look at the small home concept for veterans homes. So let's not build a big complex. Let's build smaller complexes of up to maybe 15 veterans, and build many of them spotted around Massachusetts. If you think about it, we've got Chelsea here nearby, Chelsea Soldiers Home, and then the Holyoke Soldiers Home. Nothing in between. So if you're from this part of Massachusetts, you may avail, and you're a veteran, you need those services, you may avail yourself. Or if you're from Holyoke, you might. But what about Worcester? What about Haverhill? What about
in between, yeah.
Yeah, no, North Adams. You may not. So we're really, so the Veterans Administration actually came up with this small home concept. They did a report on it and are supporting that. So the governor put in an extra $200 million to be able to jumpstart this effort, to be able to, the Dignity Alliance, Pauline Zikos, Beverly resident, is helping
Paul.
lead that effort. And we think this is the way to go. It's less expensive. It's better for a veteran in a smaller concept than a more institutional setting. And we actually are promoting this also for senior complexes, not to be in a big building, to be in a smaller home type setting, and people do better in it. So that's something that we're working on, and different things that we worked on as well. Remote. We all went remote municipal meetings. That has been huge, the participation for people at the local level to attend a planning board meeting, Concom, city council meeting, whatever it might be.
Well, we know that very well
They
here at
do
BevCam.
know.
Yeah, we've been working with the city now because they want to revamp and they want to be able to extend that concept further, and we're actively working with the city even as we speak on helping them to make that happen. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So we think it's terrific. I mean, I attended a Concom meeting in Salem a couple of weeks ago. I think there were 80 people. You couldn't fit 80 people in the hearing room, only because people wouldn't come out at 7 o'clock at night, especially on a cold winter night. But there were 70 people in there who were either applicants, attorneys, but mostly citizens who wanted to see what was going on. We think it's terrific, so we'll continue that, make sure that's a permanent process, so that people are able to really engage in government. Right from their living room.
Now, I want to make sure we get this in, Senator. Before we're going to talk about the budget and some of the things here that benefit our community, but I want to ask you. There are two bills in the state legislature, and one is a House bill and one is a Senate bill. And I know you're a co-signer on one bill, and it's an act relative to a streaming entertainment operator's use of the public rights of way.
Right.
And for our viewers who aren't aware, the Cable Act of 1984 is what provides the funds for local access stations like BevCam to exist. And so cable companies in various towns negotiate an agreement, and for use of the rights of ways in that town for their cables and digging them under the ground or stringing them on telephone poles. They have to pay for that, quid pro quo. But back in the day, the internet as we know it today didn't exist. Streaming services didn't exist. This technology has just taken over. But conceptually, what they offer is the same as what the cable companies do. They have content that they provide, and they use the local rights of ways. So the streaming companies do the same thing, the so-called OTT, over the top. So this bill is one that would require these companies, Hulu, Netflix, all these others, to pay a fee to the city that then would be split certain ways, but it would go eventually to support local access because, as I think our viewers know, the FCC recently has made some findings that have gutted some of the provisions of the original law and have watered down the amount of money that local access television stations like us, like BevCam, receive. So anyway, I just thought for our viewers' benefit that we would explain what that law, these two bills do. So can you tell us what is the status, especially the one in the Senate?
So they're in committee, looking for their hearing, and matter of fact, the streaming bill, Rep. Tucker from Salem is the primary sponsor in the House. Senator Lewis in the Senate. I've signed on as a co-sponsor
Right.
to both, and we absolutely think this is the right direction to go, to pay for this service, for this streaming service, and the fees would go into a streaming, what they call an entertainment fund. But then that would be divided. 1/5 would stay in the general fund of the Commonwealth, but 2/5 would go to the municipalities based on population, and then 2/5 to community media centers.
To select like
Right,
BevCam,
exactly.
yeah. So the idea, I guess, is that if the FCC continues on its way and guts the provisions of the original Cable Act, we will have this
Right.
source of revenue that we can stay
And
in
it makes
existence.
sense because you're providing a service, and we need you to continue to provide this service. And this is an opportunity to be able to pay for it, and rightfully so. Hulu and Netflix, those are multi-billion-dollar companies who should be able to pay for the right to stream within these communities.
Right.
Yep.
And we just talked about how especially during the COVID pandemic, BevCam and other access stations around the country were able to bring city council meetings, school committee meetings. We did a lot of the high school sports, planning board, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So, and if, with the demise of local newspapers, which we've seen over the years go down, if you don't have a local newspaper, and NBC and CBS aren't going to tell you what's going on
Right.
in your town, so if you didn't have local access TV and no newspaper, you wouldn't know what's going on in your town.
Where would you get your information? Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So, so let's talk a little bit about some of the things some of the earmarks, if I can call them that,
Yes.
in the budget. I know that there's some money, $150,000 for a training simulator for the Beverly Police
Yes.
Department.
So both Rep. Paracellin and I, we've got this beautiful police department that's going to
yeah.
open any minute,
Yeah.
right? And so they needed some funding to do some of these extras. And and when I say extra, I mean it's a necessary. But when you're budgeting for a police department or a municipal building, there's a set pot of money, and the extras don't make it. And so for a training simulator, which is extremely important for any police department to have a training simulator, so this would be available actually to area departments as well to
I
come in
see.
and do some co-training, but it'll be based right here in Beverly. So I was able to earmark that on the Senate side, and Rep. Paracello was able to earmark $150,000 for the public safety communication alarm equipment upgrades that will be housed within that department as well. Again, extremely important to make sure that you have the right communication system. When someone has an emergency, they need to be able to get through within a second,
Yep.
seconds. So we're able to do that too. And then Rep. Paracello was able to conserve to get $25,000 to address traffic and safety issues on Route 62 in Beverly. I'll tell you, working with Rep. Paracello is wonderful. He's such a strong partner, an amazing advocate, lifelong Beverly guy, right?
Yeah.
I moved out of Beverly, when I met my husband, 40 years ago, and I live in Salem. But he's just been really terrific.
Jerry's a very good guy, and he represents our city
He really does.
very well. By the way, Joan, I don't know if you know it, but they had a sort of a media day at the new police station a couple days ago.
Okay.
And we were there with Paul Layton from the Salem News,
Yes.
and BevCam was there, and we got a tour of the place from the police chief himself.
Great.
And all of the new, various departments and the evidence processing and the little meeting rooms they have and the communications and everything is state of the art. And of course they'll all be in one building, not scattered all over the city.
I saw it in its raw condition a few months ago, and I'm looking forward to the ribbon cutting and be able to celebrate with Beverly. A very long time coming for this really beautiful station that Beverly deserves.
Yeah.
And the police deserve. They deserve to live and work in a state-of-the-art facility.
Now I want to talk about one thing. I know that you are some of your key issues. The child sex abuse prevention. I think there was a little over $1 million on that, and another one. And you have to explain it to me. The MCPAP.
MCPAP.
Yeah, tell us about that. What is that?
MCPAP is the Massachusetts Child Psychiatry Access Project, and so that actually deals with pediatricians and children But we added, UMass Harvard added McPap for moms. So I'm the chair of the Ellen Story Commission on Postpartum Depression. I'm actually also the chair, Senate chair this year of the Mass Caucus on Women Legislators with Rep. Haddad from Somerset. She's wonderful. And we look at issues. The caucus looks at issues unique to women, women's issues, and one of those are racial disparities in access to health, especially for Black and brown women. COVID's impact on women, right? We just saw a lot of women leave the workforce because of childcare issues, and empowering women in government in general. We have 62 female lawmakers out of 200 legislators. We still want to grow that to at least a 50-50. So McPap for Moms actually looks at postpartum depression, which is the #1 issue in pregnancy. And we don't talk about it, right? No, we don't. Yeah,
I would have thought it would be some physical medical, but it's a psychological issue.
It is. So, and it can be physical.
Yeah.
It can manifest, during the pregnancy and into the first year after the baby is born. Men can get it as well.
Oh my
It's
goodness.
not just a female issue. So, what we need is screening. So make sure that women are screened during pregnancy and after pregnancy, especially women who may have some pre-existing mental health conditions, and where a pregnancy may exacerbate some type of issues in the mental health realm. So we want to make sure that women are feeling good, that they're not feeling, they used to call them the baby blues, but it can manifest itself in feeling depressed or anxious or something just doesn't feel right. Why am I not happy holding this newborn?
Yeah.
I should be elated. It should be the best time of my life, and I'm not feeling it.
And I know we've talked to you about this before. You had postpartum yourself, so
I
you know.
believe I did. Looking back now, I believe that I did, and it manifested itself in anxiety, an anxiety condition.
Yeah.
And so we want to make sure that women are properly screened and that they can be open and honest with their clinicians to make sure they get the right help, because it can manifest itself into severe psychosis. Not to say it will, but it can.
Yep.
And we want to make sure that women, and it's completely curable. 100%.
Now, we have just a little bit of time left.
Sure.
I do want to touch on one. This is a $350,000 in the budget for the NAN project.
Yes.
And I know I had Jake Kavanaugh here on interviewing him, and Nan was his sister.
Yep.
And he and his mom set up the NAN project. And just for our viewers to know that in the age group 10 to 24 in our country, in the United States, that the second leading cause of death is suicide, which is an astounding figure. So the budget has set aside for that. Tell us a little bit about
the NAN project.
Yeah.
So Jake's mom, Ellen, came in to see me when I was a first-time legislator, a few years ago, and told me about her personal story about her daughter Nan, who took her life. She was about a month away from receiving her master's degree in social work, and had exhibited some signs of depression through her teen years, and but they thought that even Nan thought she was okay, and then it happened. So Ellen took this really difficult and tragic situation in her life and Jake, and they started the NAN project to honor Nan and to help other, again, young teens, tweens up into the 20s. And it's a peer-to-peer mentorship. So literally they go into high schools and they teach high schoolers how to peer mentor
and that's very powerful.
Yeah,
that's very powerful.
Exactly.
Yes,
and they're having great success. So they've been here in Beverly, they've been in Peabody and Salem, and now they're spreading out all over Massachusetts, and we were able to get them a significant bump this year. So
Senator, we're going to put up your website, I believe, or your email address. What do we have up there? We have, this is your email address, Joan Lovely at mamassenate.gov.
It should say joan.lovely at masenate.gov. So there should be a dot.
Oh, there should be a dot between
Joan.lovely, just want to identify that.
Okay, all right.
And that's the phone number.
That's the number.
617-722-1410. But you know what? People can also find us on social media. We are contacted through Facebook. Sometimes we'll get a tweet or an Instagram. wherever way you feel comfortable finding us, or give us a call.
You have regular hours?
We do every Tuesday from 4 to 5. Sometimes it's 3 to 4, depending on, but mostly 4 to 5 p.m. We have office hours where someone can just let us know. We'll plug you into to a slot. But we're also, now that the pandemic is lightening up a bit, we're feeling comfortable to go back into the senior centers and different locations where we'll meet people anywhere. But you know what? If somebody can't make that, let us know. And we can Zoom. We have a Zoom account. We'll make sure that you have access.
Wow, wonderful. Thank you. I'm afraid that that's all the time we have.
That's it.
And I want to remind our viewers that you've been watching the Beacon Hill Report with State Senator Joan Lovely. I'm your host, Walt Kosmowski, and we'll see you next time.